I know I said I hated it, but I've got to catch up in For All Mankind. So this is going to cover episodes 406 up to 408, and 409 is going to go up separately, because I'll probably have some theories about how this show is going to end. But as always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review, so let's get to it. But before we do, just to say thanks for taking the time to choose to watch this channel. I really appreciate it, and if you haven't done it already, please hit the subscribe button, and if you make it all the way to the end, or even 5 minutes into it, or 2 minutes into it, leave a like as well. So For All Mankind, episode 406, Dev and Kelly Baldwin and her son are on the way to Mars. The mission to catch the asteroid is on track, and tensions are still pretty high between the Russia and US back on Earth. Alida is sent to the M7 conference, which is the treaty of nations that basically are running space at the moment, or at least seem to be, which should mean that she runs into Margot, but Margot's only watching the conference as they go over the logistics of what they would need for the Goldilocks mission to work. And as I said in my last video, it's a lot of a lot, because they're going to need people, equipment, training and strategy. And all this is getting done on a ticking clock timescale before the asteroid is out of reach. So the powers on Earth that aren't really getting on need to get on in order for this to work.
We are screwed.
Of course, all this is going to cost money, but the question is the cost worth the benefit? And this episode has a lot of the politics of finance, really, with the M7 countries in Helios having to work together on this mission, despite the fact that Russia is in a bit of a dodgy state at the moment and growing tensions with the USA as well. But they come up with a great idea of diverting the asteroid from Mars to Earth, meaning less cost and easier mining, because, you know, if you haven't realised, you're a human being that lives on Earth, not Mars. So they need to work out a new plan for the new plan to get there quickly. They go for a whole bunch of ideas, from the obvious like nukes to rockets to solar sails, and there's a debate on how successful or practical or possible any of this will even be. Because if you remember, back in the first 2 episodes of this season, they tried to capture an asteroid and it didn't particularly go well. So if they can't catch one normally, how are they going to change one's course and then catch it? I guess we're going to have to wait and see. Margot thinks she has a solution to all this, but this'll mean blowing her cover and exposing herself, letting all her surviving ex-colleagues at NASA know that she's alive, which is something that the season has clearly been building up to. But Margot's a practical person, so it's an easy decision for her, but it comes with a heavy toll, as by doing this, neither side is going to really trust her, and she's literally going to be stuck in the middle of 2 superpowers. So she goes to Alida's hotel room to bring her up to speed. And this is the moment that this show has been building to all season, with these 2 characters reconnecting, because they've known each other for decades, they've been apart for more than a decade now at this point, and Margot is Alida's mentor, but, you know, turncoat, KGB, all that bad stuff. Because once she sees that Margot's alive, she quickly realises what she's been doing in Russia and what her long-term plans are. But it is a catharsis for both characters, because, as I said, this season has been building to this moment. Well, I guess the end of season 3 has been building to this moment, and they need to work together and put aside their differences, which is kind of what this show is all about at the end of the day. We also get a lot of information about what happened after the end of Season 3 as well, and this has been hinted at throughout the season with characters like Bill, the Molly Cobb Space Centre, that kind of thing. But Margot's secret is now out in public. She's forced to give a statement by the Russians about her defection, which is all just to push the pro-Russian agenda of the new regime that's just taken over, and basically to stick 2 fingers up to the Americans. And while this is all going on, back on Mars, Ed's now been relieved of his duty, so he's got a lot of time on his hands not having the sort of practical space role anymore. But if you've ever been in a position of power, you'll always know that there's admin to be done, so that's kind of what he's up to. He goes to see Ilya, the guy that used to run the black market, and he's known him for quite a while, and they go all the way back. So the black market in space seems to have been a kind of day one thing, but they don't really elaborate on it beyond that. Miles is also frozen out of the black market because of his side hustle selling Martian rocks back home for jewellery, and he tells Lee, the North Korean who's asked a favour, that Ilya has no intention of helping him whatsoever. So Lee decides to give Miles some much needed muscle and take control of Elia's operation, forcing him out, which I don't know how they're going to do that without a long-term turf war kind of thing. But at the moment, the conflict between Miles and Elia seems to be peaceful, bloodless, and is kind of ended. It's very layer cake if you've seen that movie in the way that Miles does things. It's a kind of domino effect that he sets up. And the fact that Elia has probably pissed quite a few people off over these decades, whereas Miles is a new fresh face and a new opportunity for people who want and need things, they might see the benefit of that more than siding with the current guy. But as I said, Ed has got admin work to do, and this involves telling the workers that are on Mars that the bonus structure is going to change and not in their favour. So they decide to unionise and are coming up with an idea which is really going to mess with everyone's long-term plans for what's going on Earth, Mars, plus the whole we need to catch this asteroid somehow thing, but we've run a ticking clock and we don't know how we're going to do it. And remember, Dev, the head of Helios, which is the company that these people work for, is on his way to Mars, so he may be facing a strike by the time he arrives, and him being a billionaire might create some issues, or maybe even solve some problem. But the whole workers' rights thing on Mars has been a focus since Miles got there in the first few episodes, and like the whole Margot storyline, it's been building towards this confrontation. We've seen how they live and how they're treated and how people like Ed view them, and you can tell that that's gonna have to change. I'll be honest, I thought the last 2 episodes of this season it was going to be a sort of strike with possibly military or industrial action in order to get it back going again, in order to get the cogs moving to catch this asteroid. But it looks as if Dev is going to deal with this himself directly and with the asteroid problem as well. And that takes us into episode 407, and this picks up a few weeks into the Helios workers' strike, upsetting life on Mars, and kind of relatable given that the strikes that we had last year in Hollywood, with workers' rights wanting the basics and better than the basics, and quite rightly so, I have to say. But Dev is now on Mars and they're still against the clock in order to reach Goldilocks before it's out of range, so the machine needs to get going in order for this plan to work. Miles' friend Sam representing the strikers mainly, and Dev being the multi-millionaire because that's what he is, are going to have to come head to head. But characters like Ed and Danielle are sort of caught in the middle of all this. I mean, Danielle is a little bit more sympathetic. We've seen earlier on in the season that she actually wanted to help the workers with getting their communication back up and running. But she's the commander of the base, she likes order, discipline, and she wants a big fat asteroid. So they do try and negotiate, but it doesn't really go anywhere as the workers really have all the power. And again, the command level people and Dev might have to bend over backwards to accommodate them in order to fulfill their long-term goals. The main crux of the debate is sending the asteroid to Earth, thus taking away the Mars workers' work. And we've seen this already happen with Miles, the fact that he went there in order to mine the asteroid that was supposed to get captured in the first 2 episodes, and he's basically been a handyman or janitor since then because that mission didn't work. And like most strikes, it does get a little bit dirty, with the strikers damaging suits and vehicles, preventing the people that want to try and help to catch the asteroid from, doing any of that. Because like most strikes as well, we do get scabs, and this is a very contentious issue. And this show kind of makes you see both sides. I mean, you should be on the side of the strikers, but again, there is this whole element of, things need to start moving in order for our goals of this asteroid thing to work. So let's get to it and we'll sort it out later on. But at the same time, you're kind of with the workers as well, because money, rights. I mean, you're probably a worker yourself, but I'm really interested what you guys think. So let me know in the comments below, when you watch this episode, whose side were you on? Because the workers are right, but at a huge cost and opportunity to, basically every other human. And the powers that be don't see these workers as equal and think that they can work around anything that they've done, resulting in some accidents and some deaths on Mars. We also see the sort of darker, underhanded side, finding out that both the CIA and the KGB have agents on Mars, which is something that was probably easily to assume given the way that the North Koreans act in their section of the base on Mars. It's a real debate here in the upper high-ups of should we just use force to get this to happen, because again, it's a big deal for humanity, the things that are going on here. Dev does arrive on Mars with the Baldwins and he doesn't seem that worried about the whole situation initially. Alex, of course, is the big news, being the child of Mars coming home, but they don't really focus on that too much, and I'll be honest, I was glad, because I think Kelly bringing him felt a little bit unrealistic to me. I know the whole space tourism thing in this world is now normal, but bringing a child to like a mining colony, essentially, or a research colony, feels a little bit weird, especially when there's no other children there. But Dev and Ed do make it clear that space is a business and business is money, so it's cheaper to direct the asteroid to Earth, but offers them a pretty good deal with more money, perks, and also offers of bonuses for those that want to pick his side. And that's what the workers are striking for, is to get better working conditions. So kind of this is a win-win, but also it's kind of a compromise, because they're going to have to go along with a plan of diverting the asteroid to Earth, taking jobs away from Mars, but you know, the people that go along with it are going to get paid pretty well. And he does manage to get most of the majority of them on his side, because, you know, money, I like to eat as well. And we get a scene later on where Dev meets Ed and the two talk. But not everything is as it seems, because we do get a scene later on between Dev and Ed where they talk about the future of Mars and how they want a fully functioning, independent Mars, not dependent on Earth. And he's got one more idea. Why don't we just do what we want and divert the asteroid to Mars anyway? Because once we've done it, they can't stop it. So the drama for the last few episodes is clearly getting set up here, with a plan to divert the asteroid without anyone knowing, creating an independent Mars, hopefully in the future. But what are the ramifications of this going to be back on Earth for the people there? And what are the ramifications going to be for Dev, Ed, and anyone that takes their side? And speaking of which, back on Earth, Margot is having to seemingly pick sides, and I can see more of this coming, as they want her knowledge and her point of view. They decide to send her to America to help deal with the whole Mars situation, because, you know, she's literally the perfect person in the middle here, having experience with Russia, having experience with NASA, and just being around this basically all her adult life. So we knew that this was coming, but with her going home back to America, how is that going to affect her? How is that going to affect people that knew her? And how is that going to affect the mission as a whole? Also, do you think she's going to defect back? Can you do that? Is that a double defection? I guess it would be technically. Episode 408 picks up back on Mars with Dev's plan to steal the asteroid in full swing. We see Dev explaining it with a sort of montage of other characters explaining it in more detail, and man, do they love a montage this season. They need a lot of computing power to make this work, and part of Dev's plan is to hijack the data signal and change it to correct the course of the comet to Mars. It's a kind of Ocean's 11 vibe with various characters we've seen before, such as Miles and Sam working together with Dev, but Miles doesn't really want to risk his new position until he's convinced Dev is going to be able to offset the cash that he's going to lose with his whole Mars rock business. So it's a space heist kind of, and they need to hijack a drive onboard the Ranger spaceship to get the asteroid where they want it to be. Miles is bringing a replacement drive to change the data, and it gets locked in the room before they can get their hands on it, and this is where the whole Ocean's 11 thing starts to come into the fold. Ed uses Alex, you know, his grandson that he's not really met, who's small enough to go in through the vents and get the part that they need to help the mission succeed. But man, when Kelly finds out about this, she is going to kill him because Ed has crossed the line. And it's kind of disappointing that the only reason that Alex seems to be on Mars is to do a John McClane through the vents. But hey ho, I don't really care about the character anyway. We also see another character that hasn't really been focused on this season much, and that's Sergey, who's the other traitor that hasn't really been mentioned. We see what his life in America is like after Margot helped him to defect before she defected, and now she's back in the news, so that's the whole ripple effect that I was talking about earlier on. But like Kelly and Ed, Margot and Alida, a reunion seems to be on the cards for these two. And he does go to see Alida to ask for help to set up this reunion and meet Margot. And Alida talks to him about her feelings on Margot and how she can never forgive her. And I wonder if that is going to change. Margot manages to slip out, and this isn't easy, catching up with Alida to try and get a better sense of basically what the water is going to be like if she does go back to America and decides to live there full time. But Margot, obviously being an intelligent person, realises how deep this situation is. So is the whole double defection thing going to happen? Again, can you even do it? Is it even a thing? I don't know. She has information about both space programs, so is still a valuable intelligence resource for, well, any nation on Earth that wants to go to space. But if she escapes and she does end up staying in America, either defecting or just being on the run, what is the cost going to be? Because the Russians could just put their foot down and pull out of various missions and restrict their resources, and that would really fuck a lot of things up for everyone else. Plus, if she does go on the run, she's going to be out of the space program for good. So I don't really see that happening, but as always, you can never tell. So we're near the end of the season, and the heist seems to be the standard closing 2 episodes that we're going to get. We've just got to see Dev's plan work or not work, as the case may be. As I said, I thought this season was going to build to the whole Union Strikers thing. It might have gotten a bit more violent, and the finale would have sort of settled that resolution. But it seems that we're going to have the plot line of Dev, Ed, and everyone else that's on their side trying to redirect this asteroid before it's too late. Now, I know I'm a little behind with my For All Mankind reviews, and I really appreciate you guys that have stuck with me. And if you haven't, just hit subscribe. We'll call it quits there. I'm going to be putting up the episode 9 review tomorrow, along with some theories about how this show is going to end this season. And as always, I want to know what you guys think, so let me know in the comments below. I also might do a live stream before the finale, but probably after it, so that'll probably be this Sunday coming. So if you do want me to do a live stream, let me know as well. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter and reach out to me there at The Geeks Reviews. Just don't call it X. And again, my name's Al. Thanks for watching.